I'm Mr. B, and today we have this Pontiac G6 in the shop. It's been in my shop for a couple of days because it's had a lot of EVAP issues, and we've had to replace most of the EVAP system just because it's been such a problem trying to get this thing to act right. So I wanted to do a video and show you guys in case you have a car like this or a car that uses this same engine, and we're going to go through the EVAP system. I'm going to go through the codes list and tell y'all how to fix certain codes you get, and also how the system works, how to test the system, and how to make sure that the EVAP system is sealed up and all the valves are working correctly. If you like this video, give me a like, and as always, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a lot as a YouTuber. So let's go ahead and get started. This Pontiac is like a lot of other cars that GM builds. So I've got a list here. If you have a Buick Terraza, if you have a Malibu or a Malibu Maxx, if you have a Pontiac G6, Buick Rendezvous, Impala, Monte Carlo, Saturn Aura, or Saturn View that uses this 3500 engine, pretty much the test procedures that I'm using on this are going to be the same for that vehicle. So don't worry if you don't have a G6, but you do have these cars, just follow along. Everything should make sense. May look a little bit different on your vehicle. Other than that though, it works about the same. So let's talk about some of the codes that you can get. This car came in with incorrect flow detected codes for the purge valve, and it also came in with a large leak detected for the EVAP sealing system. The customer was also complaining a little bit about not being able to put gas in their car. It's popping up, and it was causing, you can only get maybe a half a gallon into the car before the pump was shut off. So it had all kinds of EVAP issues. It's also important to remember that this customer lives on a dirt road, so a lot of the dirt and dust and everything that was coming into contact with this vehicle was causing some of the issues that we had with the vehicle. So if you live in a dirty or a dusty environment, and you drive your car in that environment, some of that can cause these issues that I'm about to go over. So let's go ahead and get under the hood. I'm going to show you where the purge valve lives and the codes that can be caused by a faulty purge valve, and then we'll go over the rest of the car in detail. So let's get started. Okay, I have the hood popped on our Pontiac G6 here with the 3500 engine, and our purge valve is going to live right here. It is mounted to the aluminum part of the intake and is mounted with one 10mm head bolt, and you'll have an O-ring around here that goes to the intake side. And make sure that when you're installing a new valve, if you have to put one on, to kind of lubricate that O-ring, or it's not going to seal properly. This is also the home of your test port. So if you have a smoke machine or something like that, you can test at this port. It's a pretty good way to test this, and it will smoke out the whole system. That way you can see. And that's how I found one of the leaks I'm going to show you a little bit later is smoking through this test port. So this purge valve right here has this connector. It has 2 pins, and this purge valve gets 12 volts from the battery whenever it needs to purge the system. So normally when this is not powered or unplugged, this valve will be closed. Okay, so it's normally closed, and when it's energized, it opens up. And what happens when this valve opens up, it applies vacuum to the fuel tank, and that is going to recover all of the vapors coming off the fuel tank. So this is an emissions item, and this is one of the things that can actually cause a drivability or a lean code issue on your car. If this is stuck open, your tank's going to purge all the time, and that's going to create a vacuum leak. So it can create a performance issue. But normally what we see is we see purge valve codes and incorrect flow detected. That means there's something mechanically or electrically wrong with this valve. So the purge valve, we had a P0441 incorrect flow detected. If you have a circuit issue, so like the 12 volts isn't getting to this is shorted out, this can be unplugged maybe, you could have wiring issues or harness issues with the ECM, you may get a P0465, a P0443, or even a P0444. And that's just saying that the electrical side of this valve is not working properly. So I put another valve on this because the valve was hung shut, and it worked for a day. I got this from the valve from Amazon. It was like a $14 valve. You can get this at your local auto parts store for about $30, or from GM probably about $100. So the valve that I got from Amazon is $14, and it was bad the next day. It hung wide open. It was causing a vacuum leak, and I couldn't even run the EVAP test with my scan tool. So testing the electrical side of this is pretty easy. All you have to do is get your meter and command this on, you should be getting 12 volts. You can also hear a click. This valve will click if you command it on with your scan tool, so it'll click open. Just because it's clicking does not mean it's good. So to test this, we're going to take this off right here. Oops, plug the valve over it. Take this off right here. And with it unplugged, you should not be, this should hold vacuum. So if you put your vacuum pump here and pump on it, it should hold vacuum. If you don't have that, you can take a straw, you can blow in it with your breath, and it should be able to freely blow through. And then when you apply 12 volts to this, you should be able to blow through it. So unplugged, you shouldn't be able to blow through it, and plugged up, you should, with it powered on. So you may want to also check and make sure that the O-ring is good in here. It does have an O-ring. It slides in here and you'll hear a click. I'll be quiet so you can hear it. That lets you know that it's plugged up. So this is going to run all the way the length of the bottom of the car and go into the top of the fuel tank. So if you have any of the codes that I just mentioned and no other codes, this may also be a large leak detected code as well, just depending on how it hangs open. Or if it's not sealing, it can also be a large leak and cause a vacuum leak. So this is one of the big players in this system. So now I'm going to go ahead and jack this vehicle up and let y'all look at the vent valve that lives on top of the gas tank. Okay, so I'm under the car, and what I'm wanting to show you guys is this is where that pipe that we were just looking at, this is where it comes out at. It's going to be on the passenger side of the car, and it's going to be the black color pipe right here, and it's going to be plastic, and it runs all the way down the length of the car. But you see where this rack comes in right here. So this is going to hold the weight of the car. So a lot of times these can be damaged by a technician that lifts the car wrong and maybe cracks this line or something of that nature. So always check around this area and towards the back as I'm walking down. You have this connector right here. So that connector can have, let's see if I can get it to focus here. That connector can have a bad O-ring, something of that nature. It can be undone. That's going to cause a large leak code or an incorrect flow code right here. So make sure that that's good. Now this valve, the vent valve, what it does is it holds the pressure off of the tank when your car's off or you're filling up with gas or something like that. And this will close whenever the car is doing its self-diagnostic. And that valve is going to be up here on the passenger side of the tank, and you can't really see it because you have to drop the tank. So it lives up here. The electrical connector is right there. And this on this car was full of dirt and grime and things of that nature, and it was jamming the valve. This valve was stuck open, so the tank could not develop any vacuum. That was giving us one of our leak issues. This car had multiple issues, and I'm going to go over that here in a second. But to get to this part, you have to drop these straps here with a jack underneath here and lower this down. We had to drop the exhaust back here. There's two hangers. There is one right here. You want to make sure you put some lubricant on that, and you can just pop that off. And there's two back here. There's one of those there and there. And with the pry bar, you can get these off fairly easy. You just got to lubricate them up and just let the exhaust hang. If you're on your back, in your driveway, just let it hang down to the ground. If it's on a rack, you may want to get another screw jack like I have right here. This is what I was using to hold this up while I had the tank on a transmission jack. And we were able to change that valve out. Now you can see up through there, it's a little hard to see, but there's where our valve is. And like I said, you just take these, I think they're 14 millimeters that hold this tank on right here, drop it off. You don't want to drop it down too much because you still have some lines and stuff that are connected up there. But you drop this down and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll show you here in a minute. I'm going to go get the old one and show you what I'm talking about here. Okay, here is the tank vent valve. And if this is stuck closed or jammed up, this can cause the gas that's not easy to pump. If it's jammed open, it's going to cause an EVAP large leak or medium leak, or if it's jammed open just a little bit, it'll be a small leak. So, but the vent valve, the direct code's P0446, which is a malfunction. That's kind of a catch-all code for this whole piece here. 447, P0447 is going to be a circuit open, so maybe it's unplugged. Has 2-pin electrical connector here. If you get a new one of these, it may come with another harness that comes off of it. That's kind of an extension to help you plug it into it. But also, if you have a circuit shorted, if this is shorted out internally or the wiring is shorted somewhere, the ECM is going to report a P0448. And if it's a circuit malfunction, it might be not enough power getting to this or what, then you might get a 449, a P0449 for this. Now, when we took this off, this fits on the tank there, and this goes to the vent. Now, your vent may have a filter on it. You need to make sure that filter's cleaned out. But this just goes kind of to a hole, and the hole exits out at the filler neck, almost right where you put gas in. Of course, they have an apron over it that covers it. You can't see it, but it exits out there. And what has happened is dust, dirt, everything, you saw how dirty the bottom of the car was, had gotten into this and jammed it open or clogged it. I'm not quite sure exactly what happened, but that's what was causing the issue. It can cause either issue. So if these are cracked, a lot of times, you know, with the heat of the exhaust or whatever will crack these, then that can also cause a problem. But this goes to the tank of the charcoal canister, which we haven't talked about yet. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. And then this goes to the vent line that goes out towards the filler neck. This part I also got from Amazon. It ended up working. It was about $25, $30. It was a Dorman part, so I trust Dorman for just about anything. The purge valve that I bought that was underneath the hood that didn't do well was some Chinese no-name part. So, like I said, you know, normally these parts are cheap enough to where if you have an issue, you just go ahead and replace them all, because if you fix one, the other might fail and things like that. So I just go ahead and put them all on. But the important thing to remember about this valve is when you're doing a smoke test, you're going to have to close this valve electrically with the scan tool. So you close this, or you're not going to be able to build up pressure. This is what lets the pressure off the tank. And that's why if this jams up, you won't be able to put gas in the car, because the air won't come out of the gas tank. So it just pushes, the air pushes back, it builds pressure in the tank, and that will not let the pump run at the gas station. So a lot of times we see this issue with this valve causing that problem. So let me go over here, and I'm going to put the camera on the car as well and show you one of the leaks that I found that was kind of interesting, because I looked on the message boards and stuff like that, and I really didn't see anybody with this same problem. So maybe somebody's out there, they have this issue and they're looking for answers. So I'm going to go ahead and show y'all one of the things. Now, this was definitely bad on my car, and the vent valve was bad. But this was another issue I didn't foresee happening, and I've never seen on another car. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that as well. Okay, so this is the fuel tank filler area. I've taken the little apron that holds this still out so I could look down in here and see where all the smoke was coming from. When I smoked this, smoke came pouring out of this area. So I automatically thought, you know, it had a loose cap or a bad cap or something like that. However, looking at the cap, it looked pretty good. The O-rings right here, you want to make sure that it's still soft, and this one was, and it doesn't have any cracks or anything around here, because this is also a sealing surface, and this can cause that P0455 that we had, which is a large leak detected. It can also cause a gross leak detected as well. So basically what the computer does is it applies vacuum to the gas tank with the purge valve. It closes the vent valve, and it has a sensor, a 3-wire sensor that sits on top of the gas tank, and that sensor will tell the ECM how much pressure is being reduced in the tank, and it wants to see X amount of pressure, and then it will hold that pressure, and it has to hold for a certain amount of time. If the pressure goes away automatically, then that's going to set your gross leak or your large leak, where if it takes a while for the pressure to fall off, then that's going to be a small leak. So that's why we have different codes for different problems. But we were getting a P0455, which is a large leak detected. And I smoked it. I thought, oh, maybe the cap was bad because smoke was filling this area. And I checked to make sure. Also, if you forget to take your scan tool and set the vent valve to close, this area will vent as well, because right here, I'm pulling this over, but right here is where the tank vents at. Sometimes this may have a filter on it, this one did not. So this goes directly down to that white part of the valve that we just had out of the car. And so you can see how dirt can get in there and cause issues. But the problem that we had leak-wise was this piece right here. There is a plastic and metal piece right here that goes on the end of this fuel filler neck. And I couldn't find the part separately outside of the fuel filler neck. So what I ended up doing, just to see if this works, I'm gonna end up having to replace the fuel filler neck. But what I did was I put some epoxy on here and pushed it back in. The clips that hold this on, they go around here, and they're made out of plastic, and they had broke, and just over the time of twisting the cap on and off, it had loosened this up. So it looked like the cap itself was leaking. However, it was leaking back here, and the smoke you saw was coming back here, and that was causing the large leak. So even though, you know, I could run my test, my purge valve was working correctly, my vent valve was working correctly, I didn't find any more leaks in the car, this was still leaking back here, and this is why we took the fender liner out, and this is how we found it. And we looked up there and saw that the smoke was just pouring out of here. So kind of tricky. I've never seen this on another car. Normally this part is built onto the filler neck and it's not replaceable, but on this one, you know, it can be separated. So this is some type of adapter that goes on the fuel cap, and that's what was causing the leak. So I put a little epoxy around there to seal it up just temporarily to where I could get it to run the test and run the smoke test and make sure it wasn't leaking from anywhere else. And so the fix for this car, if you're leaking here, would be to replace the fuel filler neck, okay? So that's what we found on this car. Hopefully, you know, if you had an issue with yours, you found it just as easily as I did. Although it did take me, you know, kind of all day to figure this out, just because I've never seen anything like that before. Hopefully, if you're watching this, I just saved you a bunch of time that I didn't have the luxury of saving myself. So let's go ahead and recap everything. Okay, everybody, let's talk about the code list and what parts to check if you have these codes. So I'm just going to mention the last three numbers of the code. So we have 466, 467, 455, 442, and 446. You need to be looking at the vent valve or a possible leak somewhere in the system. Okay, so the vent valve is the one on top of the gas tank, and of course check all your leaks, smoke machine, all the way up to the purge valve, all the way back to the gas cap. Fuel filler neck as well, as I just showed you, they can leak as well. So if you're having issues with the purge valve, you may be getting a 441, a 465, 443, or a 444, okay? So if you have those codes, you need to see the first part of this video and check the purge valve, make sure it's working properly and purging when it's supposed to through command of the ECM. Okay, so if you're having a vent valve issue, you know, hard time filling up gas, or this can also be accompanied with the leak codes that I mentioned at the top. So you will have a 446, 447, 448, or a 449. So hopefully I've laid out everything you need to start checking and start fixing your own car. Guys, this is not difficult if you have the proper tools. So I definitely recommend smoke machine. There's plenty of videos that show you how to make your own smoke machine for little to no money. They'll also come down way in price. The smoke machine that I used to diagnose this car was probably about $2,000. However, you can make your own smoke machine out of household materials. There's plenty of videos out there for that. Also, scan tool. You're going to need a good scan tool with bidirectional control to turn these things on and off to make sure that they're getting the proper voltage and signal from the ECM. So don't just go in there and start replacing parts. With this information that I'm giving you, you should be able to find exactly what's wrong with the car. However, remember, there may be more than one thing wrong with the car. So just keep that in mind. Keep an open mind when you're diagnosing cars, and it will help you tremendously. So that about does it for us today. Please give me a like on this video if it taught you anything. And as always, subscribe to the channel. As a YouTuber, that helps me out so much, and it really helps me get the word out about some of these videos I make, and it helps people save money and work on their own car. So I'm also on Facebook if you want to talk back with me, and also I can answer codes, questions, or anything like that down in the comments. I'm pretty quick to get back to folks on comments, so just give me a shout below. And as always, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, VK if you're in Europe. I'm also on VK. I also have a podcast called Autocorrect with Mr. B that is on anything pretty much that you can find podcast at. Spotify, Google, Pocket Cast, all that stuff. I'm on there as well under Autocorrect with Mr. B. So check me out there as well. So for now, that's it. Good luck with your repair. I'm proud of you for fixing your own car, and we'll see you next time